Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to give people 1 more minute, and then we can start. I can see that people are still joining us. For those of you that I've just let in the meeting, I'm giving people 1 more minute, and then we are going to get started, just in case we have any latecomers. In the meantime, please say hello in the chat, say where you're from, so we can say hello back.
Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Let me know if sound is okay as well. You know, I always worry about that. Those of you that have attended other sessions, so give me the usual Thanos, we can hear your loud voice confirmation, please.
Sound is
Okay,
great.
okay.
Awesome.
Good,
Thank you.
good. Hello, Hampshire.
Oh,
Hello,
from Hampshire.
Wales.
Cool. Bradford, London. Awesome. I have a hey, Nick is here. My friend Nick Chan is here. Awesome. I have a lot of family in London, so I am a little bit familiar with the area and the surrounding areas. Hopefully, I'll get an opportunity to visit your university next time I'm visiting my family there.
You're always welcome.
Thank you. I would love to.
I see some
Northern
Northern
Lights.
Ireland presence
Very
there.
cool.
Yeah. Hello, 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 everyone. Okay, so I'll get started. Um, I am Thanos Vostanis. Hello, everyone. I am a lecturer here at the Tizard Center at the University of Kent. This is our monthly Tizard Behavioural Talk. The purpose of this is to disseminate good practice in applied behavior analysis and its branches. The Tizard Center focuses on research on individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and ways we can improve their quality of life and their overall well-being. And we offer courses in autism and intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as applied behavior analysis and positive behavior support. We are now in the process of rolling out our new course. So next year and onwards, we're going to have one master's course in applied behavior analysis and positive behavior support. That's going to be both campus-based and distance learning, and meeting criteria both by the Behaviour Analyst Certification Board and the UK Society for Behaviour Analysis. So if you want to become a board-certified behavior analyst or a UK BA cert, that course might be of interest to you. The Tizard Center also offers opportunities to do research, so you might also want to explore PhD opportunities with us. And we also have a peer-reviewed journal. It's called Tizard Learning Disability Review, and it focuses on disseminating good practice around supporting individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, or as we call it in the United Kingdom, learning disabilities. We welcome application submissions from colleagues in applied behavior analysis, in positive behavior support, and related fields. So if you have any good research projects that you would like to submit to the journal, it's indexed in the major databases. It has a small impact factor, so it might be a good outlet for your work, and it's quite widely read by practitioners. So it might be something
Thanos,
that you want to.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I have someone in the chat saying they can't hear. Can anyone else not hear Thanos? Because he just said a lot of important information.
Okay.
Think he's good?
So
Okay,
yeah, it might be an individual. It might be an individual issue. Cool.
awesome.
So by all means, as I was saying, check out TLDR. I will be posting some links in the chat for you guys to check out. And we today welcome Dr. Sneha. She's going to be discussing how can we be more respectful of people's neurodiversity within our field, which is something that we definitely have room for improvement. Sneha, I will be in the background. I will only interrupt you at 3 points just to deliver the 3 keywords. Folks, if you're claiming a CEU, make a note of those 3 keywords, and I will post at the end, towards the end of the session, but I will also post it now, a link to a Microsoft form where you can add your name as you want it on the certificate, your certification number, and the keywords, and I will generate a certificate for you. So I will add it now. I will also add it towards the end, but make sure you click on it, because when we finish the meeting, you're not going to have access to the chat. So let it sit in your browser so you can claim your CEU later. And please add the keywords no later than tomorrow morning, okay? Because I need to make sure that we don't take too long before you submit, because then we upload the recording on YouTube. Okay, that's it from me. Sneha, take it away. I'll be in the chat, and thank you again for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And I want to special thank you to Thanos for spending many hours with me yesterday because I'm technologically challenged and could not get my computer to log into Microsoft Teams. So now I am going to share my screen with you, but when I do that, I won't be able to see the chat. So Thanos will let me know if you have any questions or comments. All right, let's get started. Okie dokie. All right, so this presentation is largely based on a paper that myself and my colleagues worked on. If you scan that QR code, you can access the article for free, but you can also just Google it or Google Scholar it, and it will come up for free. The essence of the paper talks about how the field of behavior analysis is at a crossroads. There have been many criticisms against our field for a decade or more, but they've become louder in recent years. And how we respond to the criticisms levied against our field will define us as much, if not more, than the criticisms themselves. We can't change the history of our field, but we can acknowledge the pain that our field has caused to some people. And we can certainly commit to doing better, whether we agree with the criticisms or not. Now, I also want to say that I want you during this presentation to notice how you feel when I'm talking to you about the criticisms against our field, because it can be uncomfortable. It would not surprise me if your first reaction was to be defensive. That was my first reaction. That's many people's first reaction when you join a helping field and you're told that actually you may have caused harm to your clients. It's a hard pill to swallow. But if we do this together and we center autistic voices and we reconceptualize ABA as not um, specialists in behavior with our clients or patients, but rather a collaboration between experts in behaviors, us, and experts in autism, the autistic person, then we can actually create neurodiversity affirming practices within ABA. And that's what I'm here to talk you through. All right. So before I jump in, a little bit about me, and I don't want to bore you with all the professional stuff, so I thought I'd get a little personal as well. I have two incredible boys who keep me on my toes every single day. I don't know how a 1.5-year old has so much energy. Um, and so, a cool fact about me is that I've had the privilege of traveling to all 7 continents with my mom, my dad, and my sister. And then I ended up marrying a pilot from Delta Airlines. So he fit right into our travel loving family. And so I realize I say this with a place of privilege that my parents were not able to travel much when they were growing up. And so they were able to take us, though, and we really immersed ourselves in the culture of the places that we visited and learned about people from where they're from. Um, if you see on the bottom right corner, I had the privilege of meeting Temple Grandin, which was I was completely starstruck. Many of you, I'm sure, know who Temple Grandin is. She's a huge autistic advocate. She was the first person to ever write a autistic autobiography in 1987. Uh, the top left corner here, this was a big moment for me in May in my professional career. I was invited to speak to a congressional hearing which is basically a part of our government on how to make sure that ABA is more neurodiversity affirming and how military families can gain easier access to ABA services. So that was a really cool experience for me. Other than that, professionally, a little bit to know about me is I work at the University of Southern California, USC. I teach full time in the Masters of ABA program as well as undergraduate classes in psychology and disability studies. So I have a background in psychology and ABA, but my doctorate is in education and disability studies. So I tried to blend the two viewpoints, and that's a lot of what you're going to get in this paper today. Before I jump into the paper, I just want to take a note and mention language. Practitioners like myself have traditionally been trained to use person centered language, meaning um, to refer to an autistic person as a person with autism. But feedback from self advocates indicates a preference for identity first language, meaning autistic person. I want to emphasize also that references throughout my presentation to disability theories are not a statement of ontological positioning. I am not commenting on whether or not autism is or isn't a disability, that there's disagreement over that within the autistic community itself. I'm just recognizing that there is a usefulness of some aspects of disability theory in relating to autism related experiences. A statement on the criticisms. We're not here, and in the paper, we're not judging whether the criticisms are objectively true of all ABA and all behavior analysis, but these are some really common criticisms out there. So we need to listen so that we can do better. And also, oftentimes, these criticisms don't have a platform in the academic realm. A lot of times they're posted on social media, blogs, YouTube channels, um, sources that are not traditionally considered academic, right? And so we wanted to include these firsthand accounts into an academic paper so that we can really understand the lived experiences of our clients, who, quite frankly, are the largest stakeholders of our services. I'm really excited because I saw Nick Chown in the audience today, and I highly recommend this book, which he helped edit, Neurodiversity Studies. So I'm going to go into a little bit of terminology on understanding neurodiversity, because I think neurodiversity is this hot word right now that gets thrown around, but people mean different things when they say neurodiversity. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So neurodiversity in and of itself is, it's just a biological fact. It's not up for debate. It's the fact that there is a diversity of human brains and minds and the infinite variation in neurocognitive functioning within our species, just like differences in race or sexual orientation. It's just a biological fact. Now, the neurodiversity movement is a social justice movement that seeks civil rights and equality and full societal inclusion for everyone. And a lot of the criticisms against ABA have come out of the neurodiversity movement. The neurodiversity paradigm, which this book speaks a lot about, is its own academic discipline, excuse me, and it's been informed by many disciplines: sociology, critical psychology, critical medical humanities, disability studies, and critical autism studies. So instead of a deficit view like the medical model, the neurodiversity paradigm approaches autism as a form of divergence rather than a deficit. It's simply a difference. And the goal is to support researchers and practitioners to empower autistic people to maximize their potential. So, when neurodiversity is conceptualized as a neurocognitive variation that in and of itself does not necessitate a negative connotation, then it doesn't have to imply medical pathology. In that way, autism can be conceptualized as a combination of neurological differences and societal oppression. Now, I can't see all of you, but if you want to in the chat, um, respond yes or no to this question, and then maybe Thanos, you can give me more people said yes or more people said no. Of have you heard of the social model of disability versus the medical model of disability? The neurodiversity so you can just say yes or no in the chat. The neurodiversity paradigm is part of the social model of disability, and I will get into that in a little bit more detail. I really want to emphasize.
Everybody saying yes, Neha. Just really.
Well, you know what? You guys are way ahead of Americans. Then let me tell you, because this is news to us apparently. So wonderful, wonderful. I actually always tell my colleagues that that America is behind uh, in many ways. Anyways, the double empathy problem. The current acceptable, and so maybe all of you know what this is also, because when I present and I ask the audience, what is the double empathy problem? Do you know, have you heard of this? Nobody raises their hand in an ABA crowd. And so this is interesting. How many of you have heard of the double empathy problem?
Well,
I will explain it.
we're kind of lucky at Tizard because Damian Milton is based at Tizard Center, so he's one of ours. So we kind of, some of the people here in the crowd are ex-students of ours, so hopefully they would have heard about it. But we do have some people saying no in this case,
Okay.
which is a great opportunity for you to talk about it.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm excited that you guys that well, I have so much respect for you that you're ahead of the game. You're ahead of the curve. All right. Or maybe we're just very behind. So, the double empathy problem. The current acceptable explanation for differences in behavior is that autistic people's behaviors reflect deficits, and the acceptable form of treatment is to encourage autistic people to modify their behaviors to reflect mainstream cultural norms and expectations, right? That's how I was trained. Is that accurate in how you were trained? The double empathy problem reconceptualizes the problem as a mutual lack of understanding of each other's behaviors by neurodivergent and neurotypical people. And the appropriate form of treatment would be to work towards understanding these dichotomous behaviors. Now, I want to emphasize that this is not to say that autistic folks don't have their own support needs and challenges, but the point here is that they should be a part of the discussion in how best to support their needs and what needs they even want supported. We non autistic folks need to be mindful in changing our own behavior rather than putting the sole burden on autistic people to change their behavior. Now, I know a lot of you said, or all of you said, you know the difference between the medical model and the social model. But I want to present this slide anyways because it's important that we're able to explain these differences and concepts in layman's terms and in a way that general society can understand when we're talking to them. So I love this image because I think it sums it up very nicely. There's a person in a wheelchair in front of a row of steps. The medical model of disability would say her impairment is the problem. They should give her a cure, teach her how to walk up the steps. It's her responsibility, essentially, to learn how to get up the steps. The social model of disability would say, well, the stairs are the problem. Why aren't there ramps at every building? That would actually make it more accessible, not just for people in wheelchairs, but parents with strollers and a whole realm of other potential disabilities. So the social model of disability reconceptualizes disability as meaningful within social, political, and cultural contexts without denying the physiological aspects of impaired function. Let's talk a little bit about ableism. An example of ableism in ABA supports for autistic people is prioritizing particular target behaviors. So, for example, we talk a lot about hand flapping. Okay, so if I'm sitting here doing this while I'm presenting to you, is this hurting you in any way? You, the audience? If this is helping me present to you important information, I'm not hurting you in any way. I'm not um, threatening your safety in any way. So then why is this so often a goal to stop hand flapping? Should it not instead be a goal for the neurotypical people around your learner to be more inclusive and understanding of different needs? Another common example is um, making eye contact. Uh, Quite a few autistic folks have told me that making eye contact, what is the purpose of making eye contact? A lot of times it's to make sure that a person is listening. But quite a few autistic folks have told me that making eye contact actually makes it harder for them to process information that's being given to them because they're so focused on just trying to make the eye contact. All right. So I'm
Let
not
me
going to
pause you
get
there for a second, Sneha, just to
go for
deliver
it.
the first keyword. Okay, folks, those of you that are collecting a CU, the first keyword is empathy. I repeat, the first keyword is empathy. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not going to dive much into the social model of disability because you guys can probably teach me a thing or two, not vice versa. So I will just say that the rallying cry of the disability rights movement was nothing about us without us here in America. And so that's kind of the crux of this paper. We need to center autistic voices in our research, in our practice, and in every way possible. Most research and practice in autism seeks to cure or fix perceived deficits and minimize symptoms, which are defined by cultural and social ideals. The neurodiversity paradigm counters the deficit model and instead emphasizes neurological differences as a part of one's identity and a source of pride. It demands neuro equality. Okay, so this is an example. How many of you have heard of the DSM? Thomas, what do we got here?
We have everybody more or less saying yes. They
Okay,
know
yeah.
of the
So
DSM.
this is where the diagnostic criteria of autism and other mental health related disorders come from, right? So on the left hand column, this was taken straight from the DSM. And what do you see? Do you see my mouse on the screen, by the way, if I put my mouse here?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So
I,
so what
yeah,
you see,
I think when you move it around, we do. But if you want to make sure that we can see it, if you go to the bottom left corner, you can change it to the laser pointer, so you see where it has the pen.
oh, see, I'm
So,
technologically challenged. Thanos is so cool, teaching me all these things.
well, my distance learners have taught me to use the laser pointer. It's all contingency saved, Snake. I don't do it. It wasn't like I knew about it. So if you click on the mouse on the
Ooh,
bottom
you
left
can laser
corner,
power
there you
pointer.
go. You
So
can have your
cool.
laser pointer. There you
How
go.
cool is this? Okay. So look at the DSM. It's all medical model. Deficit, 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 restricted. And then look at the social model, the neurodiversity paradigm. This is just like a mock-up that we worked on if we were to reconceptualize the medical model to the social model in autism. You see diverse set of variation, differences, 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 and again, differences. It's just a matter of reconceptualizing how you think about things. Okay, now I'm going to get into specifically the criticisms um, against ABA, some of the more traditional practices that we've been taught, and how to change those. And it's actually not very hard to tweak those practices to make them more neurodiversity affirming. We just have to try. That being said, I want you again to think of this as an opportunity for self reflection. With that self reflection will probably come some cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance meaning your values and your beliefs may not be aligned with your actions or what you thought your actions, the outcome of your actions are. So the left hand column, and I'm going to go through this column by column, so don't worry, or rather row by row, so don't worry. Uh, the leftmost column is the criticism, and there were a lot of we had to basically categorize the criticisms. Our first round of edits said cut out 13 pages from this article, so that was very difficult. So we categorized the criticisms. The middle column is less optimal ABA practices, and the rightmost column is how we can change those practices to be more neurodiverse centered, specifically within ABA. And many of these suggestions came directly from autistic folks. And I want to note again, this is not an attack on any of you personally or on the field. I am a part of the field. I am a BCBA, and I am holding myself as accountable as I expect everyone else to hold themselves to be. Okay? Uh, so the first criticism says that the inherent goal of ABA continues to be making autistic people appear normal or neurotypical, which is fundamentally unethical. Abusive practices are often not visible to neurotypical professionals and caregivers, and often only easily understood by autistic individuals who have experienced similar experiences themselves. This leads to autistic folks feeling overwhelmed, leads to sensory overload, feelings of defeat, and communicating to the child that their natural way of acting is inappropriate, which leads to masking. And masking is hiding one's own natural ways of being or acting or one's own natural traits to blend in with neurotypicals. And the negative impacts of masking include feelings of exhaustion, burnout, increased incidence of suicidality, self injury, and mental health concerns, actual physical pain and illness, um, and needing time to recover. So again, this perspective might be hard for a lot of us to see because this is not our intent, right? But I was at an ethics conference a few weeks ago, and there was somebody not from the field of ABA. They were from the field of um, bioethics, and they were talking about in the medical field. They don't talk about intent versus impact. The intent does not matter in the medical field. It's just the impact. And so, I hear a lot of BCBAs who are a bit defensive, saying, "Well, that's not my intent," even though that ended up being the impact. But what if we removed intent and just focused on impact? That's really powerful, right? Like we need to incorporate what our autistic learners are telling us works for them and doesn't work for them. So, some solutions to this particular criticism as a field, first of all, we need to define ABA's core values and explain them in accessible language. How these values are being practically applied in ABA therapy and how they are consistent with the values of the neurodiversity paradigm. So, our goals should really be focusing on increasing quality of life by honoring autistic characteristics, not on any sort of assimilation with neurotypical peers. Goals that focus on developing coping skills and expanding on a person's strengths will be far more helpful in the long run than trying to change behaviors to fit in with the norm. Now, we have a lot of uh, direct quotes here. Okay, direct quotes here because, again, we believe in centering autistic voices. It's just not the same when you um, summarize these thoughts. So I'm going to read directly the quotes. On the first quote, an anonymous advocate that previously worked in ABA described their experiences, noting that every time we tell an autistic child to use a respectful tone, we are altering their inherent way of communicating. When we misidentify their stimming as a barrier to their learning, we are disregarding the ways in which they move their bodies to regulate and learn. When we write goals for them to play with toys appropriately and as they are designed, we are telling them that their way of playing is invalid. When we target reduced protesting and increased compliance, we diminish autonomy and self determination. In all of this, we are telling them to mask. In the second quote, an autistic advocate discusses their own experiences with ABA and masking when they wrote, somewhere along the way growing up, I realized that I had to hide the real me away because being different was dangerous. Not fitting in drew negative attention to myself. Being me was bad. Children put through ABA therapies now are being taught that to behave in a neurotypical way is good. They get rewarded for behaving like a neurotypical. The constant message autistic people are given is that being autistic is bad. Is it any wonder we kill ourselves? And on that note, the next criticism is that ABA causes or worsens mental health conditions. When a client indicates that a demand is non preferred, either through socially appropriate functional communication or through engaging in escape maintained challenging behaviors, we have to honor that assent or assent withdrawal. In the chat, a yes or no again. How many of you have heard of assent and assent withdrawal? We don't want our neurotypical children to arbitrarily comply with any demand that an adult gives them, right? Even when that demand makes them feel uncomfortable. So, why would we want to unintentionally build up this repertoire in our autistic clients? We need to base our procedures on the assumption that a client has a fundamental right to choose to assent to treatment in the moment. And rather than focusing on compliance, we teach self advocacy skills. So that means if someone is crying every time you work on a behavior, all behavior is communication, right? We teach them to ask for a break or say no, thank you, or communicate in a way that they can communicate no, thank you, because self advocacy skills will serve them for life. Thanos, did we get a yes or no?
Most people said yes. We had a few people who said no.
My goodness, you guys are really should be teaching me this stuff, not the other way around. You are ahead of us in so many ways. There also should be professional development in trauma informed care within ABA practices, and that would be a whole different presentation, but I'll talk about that a little bit. Okay, the direct quote that relates to this criticism. Therapy should make your child better, not traumatize them, possibly for many years, potentially for the rest of their life. A therapist might tell you that a little crying is a normal thing, but I was once an autistic child, and I can tell you that being pushed repeatedly to the point of tears with zero sense of personal power, and knowing that the only way to get the repeated torment to end was to comply with everything that was asked of me, no matter how painful, no matter how uneasy it made me feel, no matter how unreasonable the request seemed, knowing that I had no way of a repeat of the torment again and again for what felt like it would be the rest of my life was traumatizing to such a degree that I still carry emotional scars decades later. I was speaking to, okay, yes or no question. How many of you, BCBAs specifically in the chat, have conducted preference assessments? Let's say assessments for reward that someone's earning.
People are saying yes.
Okay. So that's what we're trained to do, right? Conduct preference assessments, and the higher the motivation to work for something, the higher the person will, the chances of the person cooperating. And so I was speaking to an autistic colleague of mine, and they described their ABA services, and they would say that anything that made me happy, therapists would take away from me, and I would have to earn it back. And they didn't understand why this was happening. So what they learned from this was that I should not show my happiness, because then whatever is making me happy will get taken away from me. Ultimately, what that led to was them not being able to feel happy. That was the impact. I'm not saying don't do preference assessments. I'm saying we really need to center autistic voices and value and respect assent and assent withdrawal, and think about the impact that our actions and our procedures are having on our learners. Uh, Again, like I said, trauma informed care is a whole different uh, presentation, but this is a wonderful article. If you haven't read it already, by Raja Raman et al. Um, it goes over these 4 different key areas for ABA practitioners. And guess what? The last of these areas emphasize skill building. That's a core attribute and strength of ABA. So we can do this. We can absolutely incorporate trauma informed care within our ABA practices, and we need to. I'm going to skim through this a little bit. Assent based practices, these are resources from my colleague if you want more reading for assent based practices. Another colleague of mine, this paper helped me so much in my professional and personal life. Personal meaning like just with my kids in general. Um, Kind extinction instead of traditional extinction. So instead of having someone telling a parent it's okay, let them cry and cry and cry, how to do engage in kind extinction and um, increase self advocacy skills. This is a great paper. I highly recommend.
And if it helps, on our YouTube channel, you can find the behavioral talk of Courtney talking about this paper that we did.
Oh, awesome. She did a talk with you guys. Amazing.
Yeah, she has already done a talk with us. It's on our YouTube channel, folks. If you're interested, I will post a link in the chat.
Highly recommend watching that then. Okay, so the next criticism is that ABA is sometimes viewed as reductionistic or overly simplistic because it focuses on a small number of overt behaviors at the exclusion of considering the individual as a whole person with a variety of needs. This is because ABA treatment focuses on relations between overt behaviors and the environment, because um, those behaviors are what? Observable, measurable, and this is becoming a problem for our clients because they feel that the observable and measurable are not enough. That doesn't mean that we stop assessing for the function of a behavior based on the data that we can collect, but it means that we need to remember that our clients are whole human beings with medical and physiological needs, with private events, thoughts, emotions, physiological sensations, going through puberty, histories that are largely unseen, which could include abuse or trauma, the culture that they live in, and the specific needs that they want. And again, the biggest way to remedy this criticism is include autistic voices. Um, it's really hard for me to get my 7-year-old son to tell me about his day at school. How was school? Good. What did you learn? I don't remember. Who did you play with at recess? I don't remember. What did you eat? I forgot. So instead, I ask him, tell me a story about something that happened at school today. Storytelling is a great way to connect with your clients. Tell me something funny that happened at school today. What was something that made you sad today? And that you learn so much about what's going on with a person, and you can incorporate those within goals and treatment planning rather than having this cookie cutter sheet of goals to work on. You're actually incorporating autistic voices. So the following quote from the Autistic Self Advocacy Network describes the criticism and its impact on autistic individuals. ABA classifies all behavior of an autistic person into four functions: to gain attention, gain access to a desired item, escape maintained behavior, or to gain sensory input or escape from sensory input. Many ABA interventions use this system to categorize every behavior an autistic person exhibits. This view of behavior inherently dehumanizes autistic people and minimizes our internal emotional and mental states. This view of behavior portrays an autistic person less as a human and more as a machine that processes inputs into outputs. It ignores complex internal reasons that someone may act out. It denies autistic people the human dignity and compassion that other people experiencing pain or discomfort receive. Reducing behavior down to four functions allows intervention practitioners, educators, and even parents and caregivers to stop any inquiry as to why an autistic person is actually behaving a certain way. Again, I'm not saying eliminate the four functions of behavior. I'm saying add to that. Okay, and finally, oh no, there's I think two more. Okay. Autistic voices and
Sneha, sorry,
yes,
can I deliver the second keyword?
next word, yes.
So for those of you collecting CUs, the second keyword is story. The second keyword is story. Thank you.
So the next criticism is that autistic voices are absent in ABA research and practice. And if you look at the history of disability, at least in America, you will see that those with disabilities were not taken as seriously as professionals. Their ideas were not thought to be good enough to include in our research and our practice. And that has led to almost a complete lack of autistic input in ABA research and practices that are attempting to serve them. So, what can we do? We can take overt action towards this value. We can center and amplify autistic voices in all ABA aspects that are related to autism, and we can compensate people for their time and expertise. Again, this goes back to the disability rights movement, nothing about us without us. By centralizing voices of autistic authors, we're recognizing that knowledge is based on perspective, and autistic adults are experts in autism. So, collaboration with autistic adults is central to the success of autism support and inclusion. I do want to take a moment to emphasize that centering autistic voices means prioritizing our clients' input in treatment planning. It does not mean excluding the expertise of clinicians or judgments of family members. It just means that we're including another stakeholder, arguably the largest stakeholder in our practices. I want to give you an example of how I've implemented this in my own practice. So this is my friend and for a time colleague, Adam. Adam is a 40-year-old autistic adult, and we wrote a book together called Understanding the Lived Experiences of Autistic Adults. For him, he wanted to break stereotypes about autism. For me, I wanted, like, I just talking with Adam, I learned more about autism in a week than I had in 10 years of coursework. Coursework on autism was not a priority in ABA schooling. And so we wrote a book together, and it was very important to me. I don't know if you can see this screen. Oh, let me just get to the next. That both of us, oh, laser pointer, here we go, boom. That both of us were listed as co-authors on this project. So what we did is there's three parts of the book. The first part and the third part are largely academic, but the second part is all Adam's story in Adam's voice. I spent 2 years meeting with Adam on the weekends, and we would just chat, talk about his life. I would gather his story, his history. I would go with him to certain meetings he went to, and just get to know him and his life story. And then I also read 20 autobiographies written by autistic people and did a deep analysis of these books. And it came, there were a lot of common themes that came out of this, out of the lived experiences of these autistic folks that we can implement in ABA practices to make them more neurodiversity affirming. Now, that's another presentation, but I will show you this video of Adam reading an excerpt from his story because I want you to see how much more powerful it is hearing directly from an autistic person about their experiences than me just summarizing it for you like I have been during this presentation. So the first couple of seconds, there's no sound, but after that, once you see Adam start to speak, if you don't hear the sound, please, Thanos, let me know.
On Friday, December 10th, 1999, I left my high school an hour early because I...
All good with the sound?
All good on my end, folks. Give us a thumbs up. Oh, that's fine.
I tried to go home, but I forgot my keys, so I locked out. My parents were home but did not let me in the house until I attempted to break the door down with a sledgehammer. Once they let me into the house, there was an hour-long shouting match. Then they called the police because they felt that I was a threat. I was no threat. If they had just opened the door when I rang the bell, I would never have grabbed the sledgehammer. The police blocked the street, making me look like a terrorist. My dad wanted me arrested and sent to juvenile hall. My mom wanted me hospitalized. My parents and the police argued for an hour, and then the police decided to take me to the hospital. I was standing there, not a part of the conversation. Every time I tried to break into the conversation, I was shouted down. It was during this hospital stay that the psychiatrist at the hospital decided I needed long-term care at a facility called the Buckeye Ranch. I was very angry that I was being taken to a place where I would be locked up. When I got there, I remember thinking it looked like a jail because there were bars around the buildings and the small room felt like a jail cell. That ended up being my home for the next 94 days. My name is Adam Paul Valerius, and this is my story. I get told that I am an inspiration and I bring hope to mental health consumers, parents, and autism parents. What I hope to achieve by writing this book is to spread that same hope to a broader range of people who I may never meet face to face. When I tell some people what I'm doing with my life, they admit they didn't think someone with this condition could do most of this because of the media stereotypes and portrayals of autism. I want to break the stereotypes. I am writing this book with Sneha, who to me represents an autism advocate. Sneha approached me to write this book to help understand the needs of autistic folks like me as we transition to adulthood. Sneha asked me to define adulthood so that we could use my definition in this book. To me, adulthood is freedom and independence, like you're finally in control of your own life instead of someone else controlling your life for you. Responsibilities come with the freedom and independence, but adulthood is being able to handle those responsibilities. Independence is like getting to see the doctor without your parents right there, having a bank account they don't have access to, paying your own rent and bills. Opportunities to meet others with my diagnosis may have existed before my adulthood, but I do not recall seeking or taking them. There were other kids at my school diagnosed elsewhere on the autism spectrum, but I was nothing like them. I didn't really want to discuss my diagnosis until adulthood when I started living my all play, no work lifestyle that I believe most people in Orange County, California despise me for. Now I want to educate people on how difficult it actually is for someone with autism to make money and be accepted in the neurotypical mainstream workplace and society. I use the term neurotypical to refer to people who are not diagnosed with autism spectrum disorders. I can't even describe me, the person. There are just no words. But if there's one thing I could tell the world about myself, it would be that I am my own brand of eccentric. Sneha helped me put my story into words. I am proud of my story and my life.
All right. So for Adam, what he said was that this process was able to give him catharsis, attention, and validation, and he was happy with his decision to write this book. Um, so that's an example of how you can include people, autistic people, in your research. All right, the final criticism that I'm going to talk about today was pressuring parents to choose ABA. I'm not sure how the diagnostic process works in the UK, but in America, once a pediatrician either diagnoses or recommends a parent to take their child to a specialist, a psychiatrist, or a behavioral specialist to be diagnosed, there's not really any organized support after getting that diagnosis. So, according to firsthand accounts, parents are sometimes agreeing to intensive levels of ABA therapy, 30, 40 hours a week, under duress, or that they are consenting to procedures that they are not actually comfortable with because they're being told that ABA is the gold standard and this is the only option. But a lot of research that's been published in recent years supports other approaches. And some of these approaches really are just components of ABA and they are called something else. So it's kind of like a rebranding of ABA. But some of these approaches are complementary to ABA. ABA is not the only evidence based practice. We need to engage in more cross disciplinary collaboration in order to better support our clients on a more on a wholer level. Okay. Now, back to feelings of cognitive dissonance. How we started. I know that Lovaas gets quoted a lot as trying to make people indistinguishable from their peers as recently as the 1980s. But really, ABA started back in the 1950s with Skinner almost exclusively emphasizing the importance of positive reinforcement. We need to get back to that core value of ABA and embrace the field root of empowerment through positive reinforcement. Now, I have a few discussion questions for you. I'm going to stop my slideshow here, stop sharing my screen here, and I have two questions. One is, what is one thing that you have learned or unlearned directly from an autistic person? And the other one is, what is one thing that you, specifically you, can do differently in your practice, whether that's research, teaching, professional role, based on what you learned today? So we have about 5 minutes. So we can either do that or you can take that as a, journaling exercise and I can have some time for questions. And also let me just, well, this PowerPoint will be available to you, but I'll just drop this in the chat, my contact information, in case you would like to um, contact me. But does anyone have any questions?
Sorry, I'm muted. Could you maybe share your screen and type your contact information in a Word document so that people who watch the recording can also see it in case they want to contact you? Because sometimes we get hundreds of people who watch the recordings on our YouTube channel.
Gotcha.
Not that I want hundreds of people emailing you. You know.
Oh boy. Just kidding. That's
In
fine.
the meantime, folks, type your comments plus questions. I do see some people who are saying to pause and see the beauty in things that I might have missed.
Yeah.
Someone else says that niche specific interests that might initially look repetitive, restrictive, are actually enjoyable and fulfilling to that person and indicate a good quality of life. Someone else says to remember not to look at things through my own lens.
I love that. I love all those examples. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Anything you disagree with?
Someone else says that to appreciate that there might be a different perspective about the world around us.
Did anyone feel uncomfortable while listening to the criticisms?
Usually people take a bit to type their questions and responses in. So in the meantime, let me give the final keyword. The final keyword is diversity. I repeat, the final keyword for your CU is diversity. Someone says it's all valid. Someone else says it's a needed reminder for us all. I think it is very accurate. The quotes were hard to hear, but necessary.
Yeah. So when I was working on the book and reading the autobiographies, there were many passages where the authors described in detail bullying and how they were bullied or harassed, sexually abused, and it was really, really difficult to read all of those things. Sometimes I had to put the book down for a few days and then come back to it because it was really hard. And this is not necessarily having to do with ABA, but just the fact that our learners are going through these things and we're continuing to focus solely on their behavior and not the behavior of those around them. Hi, Elsa. Any specific questions?
ABA worsens mental health conditions. It disappoints me that what I'm training in could cause harm.
But you know what? You're here today to learn to do better. And so, yes, this is true that it has happened for folks, for our learners, but we can commit to doing better in the future. And that's what we're here to do, to learn how to do together. So the fact that you're here, you're already taking an actionable step to remedy that.
Absolutely. And where can people find the book, Neha?
Oh, yes,
Is
on Amazon.
okay.
Understanding the lived experiences of autistic adults. And it's not about ABA. It barely talks about ABA. It's more about just focusing on having a platform of understanding the lived experiences of autistic adults and really viewing autism through the social model lens versus the medical model lens.
The neurodiversity book that you also showed, a reminder to folks, that's sitting in myself. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it is on my to-read list. So that's also an interesting book. And if memory serves me well, I got it through Amazon. So folks, if you're interested in that, check that out as well. Someone says, what message should we give to parents making choices on interventions?
Yeah, I think that you should focus on when you're explaining autism to a person, and first of all, that means you have to understand autism, what autism actually is. You should focus on not just the challenges that their child may face, but also the strengths that come with having autism. And talk about your own challenges and strengths as a person. And hopefully that will help parents navigate that conversation in the future with their children, and also encourage them to seek out multiple forms of treatment. The ABA can help in these ways. Uh, I'm also noticing this or that, and maybe occupational therapy or speech therapy in collaboration with ABA might be even more beneficial. Do you think
We, we,
that
we've done
meaningful?
some talks from speech and language therapists who are dually certified as BCBAs as well. Historically, across the years, we've been doing this, and to me, it's a no-brainer that we need to realize there are areas where we think we know more than we actually do. For example, communication and language development. If you speak to a speech and language therapist, you realize that there is way
Yeah,
too many things that we're not trained in. So we need to be a bit more
yeah.
humble. Thank you for the presentation. Very useful and a good reminder of how to improve our practice. Sad to hear practitioners are still quoting Lovas. Yes, I agree on that.
Can I answer
I,
one?
I,
Can I answer one more
sure,
question?
sure, sure. Yes, of course.
So,
By all
do
means.
you think that meaningful reform of ABA is possible while autism remains in the diagnostic manuals? And I would say yes, because I've spoken to, like, a friend of mine has an autistic child who needs 30 hours of ABA a week. And the diagnostic criteria right now is guiding the goals and guiding the interventions, even if we don't directly see that link. It is, right? It's a mindset of deficit, deficit, deficit versus difference, difference, difference. So, what I think we need is a reform of the DSM where neurodivergent folks are actually involved in creating the diagnostic criteria or commenting on and helping to shape the diagnostic criteria. As far as I know, I don't believe that any autistic person has been involved in helping create the diagnostic criteria for autism. And so I do know that there is a parent, there was a parent of an autistic child who was involved at one point, um, but not an actual autistic person that I know of. And that goes for every disorder labeled in the DSM. What if we had? So that's a big criticism also of the DSM is that autistic folks don't feel that it represents their actual lived experiences, and that's a problem. And so what I would say there is we need to let's all rewrite the DSM. And so that's a whole nother uh, realm that I think that we can tackle.
Someone says, will there be a recording for this presentation? Well, as I've said, we're going to upload it to our YouTube channel. So you can subscribe to the Tizard Center YouTube channel, and you're going to get notified when we upload it automatically through YouTube if you activate your notification thing on YouTube. Would these criticisms and harms that we've caused as a field have occurred if compassion was considered years earlier? And that is a rhetorical question, and I think we'll agree to that, really. Do you think these outcomes are achievable from just within the ABA field alone? Do you think that other professions need to be involved to really make these changes impactful?
So I went through when I was doing my doctorate in education, which is very social model, the disability studies, versus my background up until then was in psychology and ABA. I went through a kind of professional um, identity crisis of do I want to be related to ABA? How do I change ABA? Like this is all these criticisms are really overwhelming. And I realized that the change has to come from within. We already have other fields yelling at us about how shitty our treatment is to our clients. So for me specifically, I went into teaching so that I could teach the next generation of ABA practitioners to be more neurodiversity affirming, to take into consideration cultural needs, the whole intersectionality of a person, trauma informed care, compassionate care, things like that. I think that to change the field of ABA, that change needs to come from within. To change other fields, that needs to come from within their fields. But we can absolutely collaborate with other fields. We can take suggestions and feedbacks from other fields without getting as defensive as we historically have been getting. But I think ultimately the change has to come from within.
Someone else says, I think we might want to change the language. Treatment
Yeah.
should not be a word used when we're talking about autistic folks.
Right. Yeah. Maybe support needs instead of treatment. I know a lot of people prefer learner rather than client. Absolutely. Language. And we kind of need to make again, like a value statement, an ABA, and a language shift. And that needs to go across all ABA practitioners.
And the
Thank you
final
for my
comment is, yeah, love your Kobe
Kobe.
jersey.
Go
Thanks for a
Lakers.
great talk. Okay, thank you everybody for attending. I hope you enjoyed it. I've got more planned for you for the months going forward. We do have a talk arranged. I'm not going to say with whom yet, but we do have a talk on trauma-informed care at some point this year. So if you're interested in this area, we will be offering more training opportunities for you. Sneha, thank you as ever for joining. We hope we will have you come and talk to us more about your work going forward.
Absolutely.
Again, there is also, guys, in the chat, I know that people are saying thank you and so on, but if you scroll up a bit, you will find that there has been a nice set of podcast episodes from the Autistic Radio discussing what is called the ABA controversy. So a colleague has put the link in the chat. If you scroll up a bit, you'll find it. By all means, please check it out, and also please share it widely, because we want to make sure that this conversation starts and goes, a long way and gets people thinking. And there are some really good colleagues from the UK discussing the controversy of ABA from a UK perspective, and so on. So Sneha, thank you again. Folks, thank you
Thank
for
you for
joining us
having me.
today. And your CUs will be ready within the next 30 to 40 days. So please don't email me in a week asking where are my CUs. I'll get to it, okay? All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Everyone, thank you so much.